remember as a boy growing up along the Mississippi River in northeast Iowa. During the summers, my dad would take my brother and I down to the local marina and we'd go fishing off the docks. And I had this really cool Snoopy fishing pole, but rarely did I have the patience to endure a sport such as fishing. So we'd maybe fish for 15 minutes or so, and we'd get restless and we'd get thirsty, so we'd haul in our lines and take off down the road. About a quarter mile, there was a bait shop, and I remember that place so vividly. That smell of fish that just permeated the walls, and the tanks full of minnows and bait fish, and bins and buckets full of brightly colored bobbers and jigs and lures. This place was a king's treasure chamber for a little boy. And yet I remember every time I left that place, I was disappointed. You see, inevitably, we'd have to share this one can of cream soda between my brother and my father and I. And I didn't understand it. We weren't poor. My dad could have afforded a can of soda for each of us. And truth be told, I would have probably preferred strawberry. And I remember other times in my childhood when we'd be forced to share a single can of Barks root beer between my father and my brother and then a younger sister. I didn't understand this. This didn't make sense to me because I've always known my father to be a generous man. I couldn't understand why he would be so stingy with us. I'd never seen him be stingy with anyone. My dad's an attorney in a small rural town, and on occasion I knew him to accept produce as payment for his services. He was open with his money, and he was also open with his time. My dad would work hard all week long, and oftentimes I remember piling the entire family in the van and driving a couple hours to where he would pour his blood and sweat into the ground and over the buildings of the farm on which my mother grew, and at his own parents' house. You see, my dad had put himself through law school as an apprentice to an electrician, and he would never miss an opportunity to strip wires in his knuckles just to help someone out. This single can of soda just didn't make sense to me. I had a hard time trying to reconcile my father's generosity with others and what seemed to be a stinginess with us. But I can look back on it now and see that my father was teaching his children life lessons through those communal cans of soda. He was teaching us of want and of need. My father never left us in need of anything. But there were moments when he left us wanting. My father did, and he still does, care deeply for his children. And no one could ever accuse him of living life with closed fists. You see, never have I known anyone with such a robust theology of living with open hands. Yet my father didn't speak to me much of theology as a child, and he never spoke of his generosity. That's because he lived it. It didn't need to be spoken of. His generosity was embodied in his life itself. And his wisdom in this was proven right or justified by what it produced in him. Love and generosity. An abundant life. My father is a good man. There's this situation where Jesus is faced with somewhat of a discrepancy, something that just doesn't seem to add up. And Scripture tells us that Jesus responds by saying, "Wisdom is justified by all her children." So let me ask you this. How are you allowing those life lessons that you've learned to shape your life now? What will your legacy of wisdom be?